Don't try to escape it yet, because if you can still see the trap, you're not the one it's designed for. The real trap doesn't feel like pressure, it feels like choice. It gives you goals, ambition, a version of success that feels personal, but was never yours. And the moment you question it, something strange happens. You don't feel free, you feel disoriented, because what you're really risking is not your comfort, it's your identity. And most people would rather stay trapped than find out who they are without it. Most people do not realize they are living inside a structure they did not choose. It is quiet, invisible, almost elegant in how it operates. It does not imprison you with force, but with familiarity. You wake up, follow a routine, respond to expectations, perform a version of yourself that feels acceptable, and slowly, over years, sometimes decades, that version becomes your identity, not because it is true, but because it is repeated, and one day, often much later than expected, a subtle unease begins to surface, a feeling that something essential has been left behind, not lost, but abandoned. This is the invisible trap, and most people never escape it because they don't even know they're inside it. Modern culture doesn't recognize this as a problem. In fact, it rewards it. We are taught to build identities quickly, to decide who we are early, to become efficient, productive, optimized versions of ourselves. The faster you define yourself, the faster you can succeed. Student, professional, provider, achiever. These roles are praised because they are measurable, visible, useful. But what is rarely asked is this: who are you when none of those roles apply? In a world obsessed with external milestones, career growth, financial stability, social validation, inner development becomes secondary, something vague, optional. We celebrate youth for its potential, but we rarely prepare people for the psychological complexity of aging. We chase success, but we rarely ask whether that success aligns with the deeper architecture of the self. And so, many people spend their lives becoming someone without ever questioning whether that someone is real. This is not failure, it is conditioning. Carl Jung observed something unsettling about this process. He believed that the personality most people present to the world, the one shaped by expectations, norms, and social approval, is not the true self. He called it the persona. It allows us to function in society, to cooperate, to communicate, but it comes with a cost, because everything that does not fit into this acceptable identity, the doubts, the impulses, the contradictions, the deeper desires, is pushed out of awareness. Jung called this the shadow, and here is where the trap begins to form. The more you identify with your persona, the more disconnected you become from your shadow, and the more disconnected you become from your shadow, the more incomplete your sense of self becomes. But incompleteness is uncomfortable. So instead of exploring it, most people distract themselves from it. They stay busy. They stay defined. They stay asleep to themselves. The trap is not that you are living a lie. It is that you are living a partial truth and mistaking it for the whole. And escaping this trap is not about abandoning your life. It is about deepening it. But this requires a kind of psychological movement that most people are never taught. It unfolds in stages, not as a checklist, but as an inner progression. The first stage is identification. This is where almost everyone begins, and many never leave. In this stage, your identity is largely shaped by external structures, family expectations, cultural norms, educational systems, social feedback. You learn who you are by observing how others respond to you. If you are praised for being responsible, you become responsible. If you are rewarded for being agreeable, you become agreeable. Over time, these adaptations harden into identity. I am this kind of person. I am not that kind of person. But these statements are often less about truth and more about survival. They are strategies that worked, and because they worked, they were repeated. At this stage, life can feel stable, even successful, but beneath that stability, something remains unexamined, something unchosen. The second stage is discomfort. This is where the invisible trap begins to reveal itself, but only faintly. It often doesn't arrive as a clear insight, it arrives as a feeling, a restlessness that has no obvious cause, a sense of misalignment that cannot be easily explained. Sometimes it appears in quiet moments, late at night when distractions fade, or in unexpected pauses, sitting alone in a car, staring at nothing in particular, feeling a strange distance from your own life. Imagine someone standing in their own home, surrounded by everything they worked for. The furniture is arranged, the responsibilities are fulfilled, the routine is intact. And yet, there is a subtle question lingering beneath the surface. Why does this not feel like enough? This is not ingratitude, it is awareness beginning to emerge. Viktor Frankl described something similar when he spoke about the existential vacuum, a sense of emptiness that arises not from lack of activity, but from lack of meaning. And meaning cannot be borrowed, it must be discovered. The third stage is confrontation. This is where the process becomes more difficult and more honest, because now the individual begins to turn inward, not to reinforce the existing identity, but to question it. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow becomes central. The shadow is not just darkness or negativity. It is everything within you that has been rejected, ignored, or suppressed in order to maintain your current identity. It may include anger that was never expressed, desires that were deemed inappropriate, talents that were never developed because they didn't fit the expected path, or even aspects of personality that were simply inconvenient. To confront the shadow is to encounter parts of yourself that feel unfamiliar and sometimes uncomfortable. It requires admitting that the version of yourself you have been presenting is incomplete, and this can feel destabilizing. Because if you are not who you thought you were, then who are you? This is the psychological tension that many people avoid. They retreat back into familiarity, they double down on their roles, they silence the discomfort, and the trap closes again. But for those who continue, something deeper begins to unfold. The fourth stage is integration. This is not about rejecting your previous identity, it is about expanding it. Instead of clinging to a narrow definition of who you are, you begin to allow complexity, contradictions, depth. You recognize that you can be both strong and vulnerable, capable and uncertain, structured and spontaneous. This process, what Jung called individuation, is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole, and wholeness does not mean the absence of conflict. It means the capacity to hold it consciously, to live with awareness rather than automaticity, to make choices that are aligned not just with external expectations, but with internal truth. This is a quieter kind of transformation. It does not always look impressive from the outside, but internally it changes everything. There is a moment, often subtle, often private, when a person realizes they no longer need to perform their identity. They can simply inhabit it, or shape it, or even let parts of it go. Imagine an older individual sitting alone in a quiet room. The house is still, the responsibilities that once defined their life have softened, children have grown, careers have stabilized or ended. There is no longer a need to prove anything, and in that silence a different question arises. Did I live as myself, or as someone I thought I should be? This is where the consequences of the invisible trap become undeniable, because time has a way of clarifying what we avoided. Friedrich Nietzsche once suggested that the greatest burden is not suffering, but unlived life, the possibilities we ignored, the truths we postponed, the selves we never allowed to emerge. Near the end of life, the persona loses its power. It becomes irrelevant. What remains is something much more fundamental, a sense of inner coherence, or the lack of it, a feeling that your life was aligned with something real, or that it was shaped entirely by external forces. This is the existential peak, not dramatic, not loud, but deeply revealing, because here there is no more time to become someone else, only to understand who you have been. And yet this realization does not have to wait until the end. It can begin now, quietly, without disruption, without abandoning your responsibilities or your life. It begins with a simple shift in attention from outer validation to inner observation, from automatic roles to conscious awareness, from asking, "What should I be?" to asking, "What is actually true for me?" Escaping the invisible trap is not about rejecting society. It is about no longer being unconsciously defined by it. It is about recognizing that identity is not something you inherit once and keep forever. It is something that evolves if you allow it, and evolution requires discomfort. It requires questioning. It requires the willingness to see yourself beyond the roles you have mastered. Most people never escape this trap, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, but because they never pause long enough to notice it. They remain efficient, functional, successful, and quietly disconnected from themselves. But you are not required to live that way. You can begin to observe the patterns, to notice where your identity feels rigid, to ask whether the person you are presenting is the person you truly are, or simply the one that was easiest to become. This is not a problem to solve quickly. It is a process to live through, slowly, consciously.